much. Thanks, Steve. And Ahmed, you're going to share the slides from your end, aren't you? That's great. Now, there might be sometimes a little bit of a pause between slide transitions, but we'll see how it goes. So this is Trauma-Informed Education, a Gazan perspective. And we'll begin with an acknowledgement of country. So I'm here at the University of Notre Dame, Australia, and we're proud to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of this land upon which our university sits. And in my case, that's Whadjuk Noongar people here in Fremantle, Walialuk. And Ahmed will be talking about the place where he is a little later. Yeah, thank you for adding that, Tracy, in the chat. And please go ahead and introduce yourselves in the chat as well. Yeah, so look, we'll continue on. And as we have this topic of trauma-informed education, we've included a slide with some resources for self-care, which you can have a look at later. So let's go on to our introductions. Yeah, so here's the nature of what we're doing. After our introductions, I'll talk in general about trauma-informed education, and Ahmed will continue to talk about his experience over in Gaza. Yes, Ahmed, you came up with this photo. Do you want to explain what is going on and what that's all about?
Sure, thanks, Martin. Hello, everyone. This one was in 2018, I suppose, and it was a CELTA course that I was doing in Auckland. It was at AUT, and yeah, Martin was my tutor. This is where we met, and look at that young boy. I was doing a CELTA course that was kind of re-engaging in TESOL career. I was doing my PhD in New Zealand, and then after finishing the CELTA, I re-engaged in teaching in New Zealand, finished my PhD, and came back to Gaza. So currently, I am based in Gaza, in Palestine, and I teach at Al-Aqsa University here in Gaza. Yeah, and since then we have been in contact, Martin, right?
Yeah, we've kind of kept in contact, and I've moved country as well. I'm over here across the ditch.
Yeah. So good to catch, to connect again.
Yeah, look, I'm going to talk about this subject. To be honest, I'm not an expert in this subject. I've just been learning about it. So really, I'm sharing a little bit of what I've learned over the last 2 months. And then you'll hear from Ahmed. You'll be able to ask questions as well. And so, look, the idea of trauma-informed education is really based on the idea that trauma is an important part of human experience. And as you can see there, it has broadened out as a definition to cover a range of different difficult, stressful experiences, and including the existence of intergenerational trauma, which is obviously an important issue for us in Australia. And the key point, I suppose, about trauma in terms of education is its deep, profound, and long-lasting impacts on our lives. And many of us and many of our students will have trauma which happened when we were children, called ACEs. But in addition, we and our students experience traumatic life events before, outside, and inside our university experience. Yeah, and I think this slide, I'm not going to read out all of the points on here because I want to give you plenty of time with Ahmed today, but it's common, and I think that's something which I've been, I've learned about over the reading I've done recently. Childhood trauma is relatively common, unfortunately, but also as adults, we experience trauma. Women experience gender-based violence, and many of our students experience grief as a result of bereavement. Breen et al. Was a presentation here recently in Perth about an initiative to address the fact that students experience bereavement and grief during their university studies. And it also emerges as a result of some of the experiences that happen at university. And so workplace violence is something which some of our students will experience during their courses. And really, that's the basis of the idea of trauma-informed education, to acknowledge that trauma has important impacts on learning, which is what we do, but also to acknowledge that some of the learning events and experiences themselves can or have the potential to cause or reinforce trauma. And that's often referred to as re-traumatization. And look, we're going to hear from Ahmed, who's in a situation where the whole community is experiencing extreme levels of trauma. But the fact is that, as we've just seen, trauma is an important part of experience here as well. This is an interesting article published by an Australian lecturer who gave a class in which they invited a member of the stolen generation to talk to students. And it had a profound effect on those students. And I think we can acknowledge that it was a very important learning experience for them. And these are Australian students who must have heard of this multiple times, but somehow it had gone over their heads until they'd seen this man talking to them, someone who the same age as their parents, and perhaps, you know, this was going on, the trauma he experienced was going on at the same time as their own parents were growing up. And as you can see, you have those positive impacts at the top, but inseparable from them, you have these, what we'd have to see as negative impacts on their health and well-being, in particular, that sense of being overwhelmed by the experience. And it made the lecturer think that he wanted to try to include the potential for very meaningful learning, while at the same time doing something to address the potential for re-traumatization, which was really evident in the survey that he did with the students. Yeah, so I suppose the basic foundation of trauma-informed education is around safety. And as it says there, avoiding the risk or mitigating the risk of harm arising from the experience of tertiary education itself. And then, if possible, helping those students with tools and resources and strategies where they can begin or continue on a healing process. And those 4 R's are a well-known model. And the outcome, let's say, is to promote resilience. Okay, even if in some cases, many cases, the causes of that trauma continue to be part of their social reality. And I'm really nearly at the end of my sort of theoretical introduction. Based on that idea of trauma-informed education, these certain principles have emerged. And as I mentioned earlier, safety is the fundamental concern. But in addition to safety, considering some of those impacts of trauma on individuals, these four other principles have been formed. And what we're going to do now is hand over to Ahmed, who's going to introduce the context in which he's working. And he's going to structure his comments around those 5 principles. Thank you, Ahmed.
Thanks, Martin. Thanks, everyone. In fact, it's my pleasure to be with you today, joining you here from Gaza. Yeah, as Martin said, I was in that part of the world in 2018 to 2022. I did my PhD in Auckland, and then 2022 I came back to Gaza, and I've been working here since 2022. Today I'll be talking about those 5 principles and how they apply to my context, and how we try not to re-traumatize traumatized students, because we are talking about a context that was like this. This is a group of young men and women, students just joined university. That was orientation week. This was September 2023, just a few weeks before the war erupted. And as you can see, these students were like just finishing high school, joining university, doing orientation, exploring campus, exploring services, etc. And a few weeks later, everything changed. It really changed in terms of infrastructure, in terms of human being being traumatized. When I talk about human beings, I'm talking about students and their educators as well. I mean, everyone is involved in here. And it is really sad to say some of these faces that I recognize personally are no longer with us. I know them personally. They passed away during the war. But that's reality. That's part of the story. Now, this is the building where my office used to be located. That's the building where the English department at Al-Aqsa University was located, but it's all rubble. Now, within that context, in such an environment, how to provide safety for students who are traumatized? Now, in July 2024, last year, we decided that, well, this is not a short interruption. It's taken a long time. It's ongoing crisis. So the university decided that we will resume learning, online learning for university students. School came a bit later, but ultimately we decided that, okay, we will resume teaching online and see how it goes. We will start with the minimal requirements. And then, of course, online learning. But how? Are you going to use Zoom, just like this connection, or Google Meet, or other platforms that require really strong internet signal and reliable connection, which is not available for students, which is not available for educators as well? And also how to make them secure, to provide them security and safety. Here was the role of educators to kind of adapt their approaches in teaching and in order to kind of help students feel safe. For me, I decided that I would use really minimal kind of online platforms that require, you could say, low bandwidth connection, or that would probably avoid the risk of pushing students to go to probably public places like internet cafes that could be dangerous, that may re-traumatize students by exposing them to probably dangerous situations or dangerous um, atmosphere. So yeah, that was part of the solution. That okay, we'll ask students to kind of join a WhatsApp group for every course. It's kind of a community for that particular course, and students can join at their own pace. They can access the material at their own pace, because most of students are in tents, living in tents or in shelters, which are really overcrowded. So if you ask them to stay where they are, this hopefully kind of fast gives them a sense of community, that they are joining a group online at their own pace, and also avoid the risk of asking them to go to places which might be somehow dangerous. And of course, in line with this, we had to take into consideration things like deadlines for assignments where had to be flexible. Like it's not normal situation, and students are going through unimaginable situations. Learning was kind of asynchronous. Like for me, and as the head of the department, I've been talking to colleagues in the department about this, and they follow somehow similar approach in flipping their classroom, sending the material in advance, and talking to students later on if they had any questions or queries about the material. And when it comes to exams or quizzes or kind of assessment component, of course, these were extended, they were flexible, hopefully to accommodate the needs of not really unique needs of our students in such circumstances. So for me, for example, I had to construct my final exam using my smartphone. That was the only tool available for me at that time. So I had to access Moodle, that's the platform we use for exams and quizzes, and then construct the exam, and of course make it available for some really long time. Because if it is, I mean, internet access, if it is available for students in the morning, it may not be available for students in the evening or afterwards, etc. So that kind of availability of assessment and flexibility in deadlines hopefully provided students with that somehow feeling of safety. Now, during the presentation, I'll be referring to some findings that I found as part of my ongoing research with my students. For example, when I talk about the students using smartphone, my findings suggest that 92% of the students depend only on their smartphone as the device to access their material and access their classrooms, which of course gives you a kind of background on how things are going and how difficult and challenging it is for students and for educators as well to manage that kind of, to engineer that process. Now, to give you some background on how things are going, this is a real story. This is Dalia, one of our students. He was featured on a CBC News report recently, and as you can see, Dalia goes to the roof of her house, and she raises her mobile phone with a stick to be able to catch this internet signal using an eSIM on her smartphone. That's the smartphone she uses, and possibly she would share with her brothers and sisters at home so they can access education. At the same time, she tries her best to get internet connection. And look, to be honest, I do this myself. When I go to the roof of my house, when there's no internet connection and I have to use my eSIM, I have to do this because it's only available at really specific places. Not every single place you can catch the signal, and you have to do all that maneuver in order to be able to access the internet. For example, Dalia, in this case, she would raise her phone, download the material, PDF or voice note or on WhatsApp group or whatever she gets in the WhatsApp group, and then study offline, uh, and prepare questions for later maybe. When it comes to trustworthiness, that's the second principle we are talking about today. Look, these are real photos. These are my photos. I took these photos of this is my battery. It used to be my vehicle battery, but the vehicle is not moving for like 2 years now, almost 2 years since the war erupted. And I felt that, okay, there is no use for this battery. So I have to use it. I have to kind of adapt. I have to do some kind of adaptation. That's my modem. And these are, as you can see, some broken, damaged solar panels. But what I'm telling you, please don't try it at home because it is risky first and it poses real harm to the battery. So this used to be brand new battery. But as you can see, these solar panels, because they are damaged, they produce low voltage kind of power. So what we did, we plugged these solar panels directly into the battery, directly, which is wrong. But again, it charges. And then that battery, when it is full, hopefully, it powers that internet modem. And it worked. And this is what I'm doing now. Martin knows this. That's what I'm doing now while I'm talking to you. The battery is here next to me, and the modem is running. So apologies if it interrupts me in the middle. But why I'm telling you this story? Because this is part of trustworthiness that we could create with our learners, share our adaptations, talk about personal adaptations with our students, tell them that we are in the same scenario. Don't worry, your internet connection doesn't have to be perfect. Your home environment doesn't have to be perfect. Even if you are a tent, even if you are in a crowded shelter, don't worry, it's okay. That's why I share those personal adaptations with my students and talk to them. That's how I connect to you. That's how I reach you. I'm not asking you to do the same. I mean, my students. I'm not asking my students to do the same because they may not afford to buy maybe solar panels, even broken, very, very expensive, or have steady internet connection, or have a vehicle battery or a used battery at least. So yeah, it's all about transparent and consistent communication about personal adaptation, about personal circumstances, and also kind of giving updates and receiving updates from learners. For example, in the group, we feel like it's a community. It's a family that gathers us all, and I take it kind of informal when it comes to communication. We keep consistent, and perhaps psychologists I'm not a psychologist, but when it comes to psychology, I've done some reading about this, but psychologists might benefit us in this regard. It feels that the more you communicate with students and ask them about something that is not related to the war, not related to their traumatizing situations, it feels that students become more engaged and interested in what's going on. And maybe we can talk about this in the QA session later. Okay, now when it comes to choice, that's the third principle. Now, if it comes to choice, we can't, for example, say that, okay, we can use Zoom if you wish, we can use Google Meet if you wish, because these choices and options are tricky. In our situation, these are really tricky. It is not easy to use Zoom because, as I said earlier, it requires really steady and reliable, strong internet connection, which is not the case. And this applies to other platforms, Google Meet. So the choice that we opted for was WhatsApp. It's convenient, it's low bandwidth, and with really minimal connection, it seems to work. Text messages, voice notes, really works. But within that choice, I needed to do some kind of adaptation as well. I had to make the participation modes that students um, chose optional in terms of, okay, if you don't want to participate in the class in the form of a voice note, you can write a text message. You can send your participation in the form of a text message. Or you can send me privately. Or you can send a voice note if it is convenient. Or later on, if you want to submit an assignment, you have a choice. You can write it handwritten, take a photo, and send it as a photo in the group. I mean, what is important here is to make students feel that they have choice to make, because it's just forcing them to use one single choice here, I suppose, may make things worse in terms of supporting them and empowering them. For assignment submission, as I said, if you have a laptop, okay, fine. Type your assignment, submit it, send it, even if it is somehow late with extension. We are flexible. Why I said if you have a laptop? Because, as I said, 92% of the students are using smartphone to access the material. I myself was lucky enough to rescue my laptop in the last minute. A bombardment happened here just next house, and I was about to leave my laptop home and flee the house. But in the last minute, my wife told me, "Hey, your laptop." I said, "But come on, Mom, I'll carry my son." I mean, because you are fleeing, you are evacuating. But then in the last minute, I thought, oh, I might need it, and grabbed it, and here I'm using it and talking to you. So I assume this happens to learners as well. Students, many students told me that, well, I left everything at home and all my house was leveled to the ground. I lost everything. I lost my box. I lost my clothes. You're talking about a laptop? So yeah, I mean, we are talking about basic needs. Students are after basic needs, which is not unexpected. When it comes to customizable learning options, what I mean here, when I send the material, when I flip my classroom and ask the students to go the material, I take into consideration the situation that I'm talking about. Internet connection is unsteady. Electricity is not available. Well, I can flip my classroom. I send the material, but before I send it, if I'm sending a PDF file, I need to compress the file to reduce the size of the file so that learners can access it. Well, you might say it's a bit exhausting, but as educators, I think we have to go an extra mile. We have to do an extra kind of effort to help learners, especially those who are traumatized. Well, I'm not talking as if I am not traumatized. As Martin said, we are all traumatized here. We are all in the same scenario. I personally lost 40 family members during this war. So it's each one of them is a story, and of course, and this is traumatizing. It's not just because a normal number or just normal experience. But again, we try our best to continue to keep on and to kind of use education as kind of form of empowerment or resistance. So as I said, you compress the file, you send it. If you are sending a voice note on the group, you also compress it, because if it's a big size, it might be difficult to play. Students may find difficulty accessing. That's why that kind of customization in the learning options is key and really helpful. Collaboration. It's all about collaboration. What we've been talking about is a form of collaboration in one way or another. But again, during the course, I had to collect feedback from students in the group about how they find things moving. I wanted them to inform my teaching adjustment, to inform the way I am moving. Just using a poll feature on WhatsApp. If you send a poll, a short poll, like Do you think we can improve this? Give them options and they can choose. It gives you an indication on how things are moving. If you prefer to do this the other way or that way, I mean, giving them options to choose from, and based on the feedback that you collect, you adjust your teaching style. When it comes to community resilience and resource sharing, in the group, students used to share resources. For example, one student used to write notes for every class, and then later she would share those notes with other classmates and share, yeah, I found this really useful. Everyone, if you want to use it, these are my notes. And she would send the notes as a PDF file or as a Word document, which is nice, which shows that students are collaborating among each other. And also it gives kind of a sense of community among them and shows how they support each other. In my research, I found that students receive really good family support. Family support when it comes to, now we are talking about students who are living in the same place with their family most of the time. They are living in tents or in shelters. And part of their daily routine now, new daily routine, is to look after their siblings or their kids, if they are married, or to do household responsibilities, daily responsibilities, which are unimaginable, like cooking on fire, cleaning the tent, organizing things, etc. And students were talking about family support. My family gives me time to focus on my study. They say, yeah, don't worry about household. Just worry about your study. Focus on your courses. And that family support is really important because it empowers students and it shows that collaboration is there in terms of parents or family members among each other. Empowerment. During the interviews that I conducted with the students, they were talking about that hope, that kind of motivation that comes from inside that pushes them to continue learning. And it refers to that intrinsic motivation that comes from within the learners, that they want to continue regardless of the situation, despite these really horrific circumstances. And yeah, motivation is there. Students were saying, yeah, I think this is the light in the end of the tunnel. Education, it's important. It's my lifeline. And they view it really as resistance. It is a form of empowerment, that they find their agency, they find their identity, which is part of their character. And one strategy that Martin and I feel that it really helps in this regard in empowering learners is writing and storytelling. It feels like it gives students space, time to heal. It gives them time to express what's going on. And luckily, recently, Martin and I won a grant by the British Council in Palestine, whereby we will be training learners. We'll choose 50 young Palestinians in Gaza. We'll be training them to write stories, digital storytelling in the form of videos, blogs, and so they can talk about their experiences of determination, of resilience, and also at the same time adversity. And hopefully it's going to be informative and interesting project. We look forward to it. As part of empowering students, as I said in the beginning, it felt like this is not really a short-term interruption, and it's ongoing. And I felt that, okay, we resumed classes, we are teaching them, but perhaps this was not enough in terms of supporting students and empowering them. That's why I personally took the initiative to launch this, an initiative I called Reconnect. I launched it mainly for students of the English department at Al-Aqsa University. And I felt, okay, education cannot wait. And education here, I mean, not only formal education or school education or university education, education in the wider as a wider concept. So it has been really welcomed by students, by stakeholders, by the university, and it's so far we have really conducted webinars, and as you can see, mainly this initiative aims to empower students and connect them and re-engage them, reconnect them. That's its name, to reconnect them after this prolonged period of disruption and hopefully not lost education or lost time. These webinars have been conducted so far, and many others are on the agenda, hopefully, to introduce students to topics, not only academic topics, but provide them with learning opportunities, with ideas on how to heal, how to re-engage in learning, how to overcome trauma, and also access opportunities available online, and hopefully like training opportunities, scholarships, etc. If you have any questions or suggestions or comments, please feel free. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. I think, Steve, you've got your hand up there.
Oh, Ahmed, gee, this is our 6th year of running this, and I think that's the most inspired personally I've been. What an amazing story. That is just, I think it really does. I put a comment in chat about how it puts into perspective issues we may have here, and that we think that a frozen Zoom screen for 10 seconds is a major disaster. It really, really isn't. But one thing I wanted to ask you about, you've really outlined very clearly the case around trauma-based instructional learning for the students. What about for the teaching staff, people like yourself? What sort of consideration is given to trauma or trauma effects on the teaching staff?
Thanks, Steve, for your comment. It's really nice feedback. But that's a good question and a tricky question at the same time, because as part of my research that I was talking about, I asked students, to be honest, do you feel that you received institutional support during the war? And surprisingly, students said no institutional support, but support that we received was family support and peer support, and also some lecturers made our life easier. When it comes to educators themselves, I'm really sorry to say that it is all personal effort. It is not institutionalized support, because I'm not really embarrassed to say that the administrative structures of universities were about to collapse. We're about to collapse in the beginning of the war. And then when we resumed teaching online, it was about half a year after the war erupted. But again, it was with the minimal requirements. That's why I am the head of the department. So I can't kind of ethically, professionally, I couldn't say, no, I'm not able to teach, but I had to do a lot of adaptation. But when I approached the members, the faculty members in the department, and asked them, can you please take this course and help students? When they said that, yeah, no, I live in a tent and I can't do it, I don't have internet access, I couldn't force them to take it. So I could either take it myself or seek help from volunteers who are overseas. And really a big shout out to those volunteers who been teaching with us and helping us. Really, really nice people, really nice individuals from around the world. I reached out to some friends, and then I asked, can you please help us with like this course or that course? And they were, oh, I'm there, I'm willing. And since then they have been helping. Now, educators who are traumatized, well, I have a colleague who's really resilient and unbelievable. He lost his son. His wife was critically injured and she receives treatment in Iraq now. His house was leveled to the ground and he was living in a tent. And he said, yeah, I would love to help. And he was teaching one course. What kind of psychological support would you give to this one? Even if you are a specialist, what kind of support can you give? I mean, it's just thank you and keeping in touch, keeping asking about him, and yeah, it's going because that's the only way we have to go to keep on. No other choice.
Yeah, and Ahmed is mentioning himself, but the room he's in now was full of rubble a little while ago, right? You had to clear it out, and it's blurred background, but part of that wall was knocked through by the bomb that was dropped on next to his house, and there it is. You just carry on, right? It's yeah, carry on. Yeah, there were a couple of hands up. Sorry, I'm not able to see all of you with your hands up, so feel free just to unmute and ask.
Yeah, feel free to ask, please. I love your questions.
Gee, I'll go again if no one's wanting to ask. I've
Go
got a
ahead,
million
Steve.
questions.
Go ahead.
You mentioned, I'm astounded to hear that the motivation is so high to learn, that education not got pushed to the back burner, it got pushed to the front. I think that's brilliant. Why do you think that is? You know, but I would have thought that things like just, you know, feeding family and getting to the supermarket for whatever goods are there to get food or to get water would be priorities for families, I would imagine, in a war situation. The fact that motivation for learning stayed high, I think, is incredible. What do you attribute that to, Ahmed?
Yeah, again, that's a good question. I've done some reading on this topic, and in fact, yeah, why in these harsh situations, if we're talking about the basic needs, they come first, like food, security, etc. But again, education is there, which is not in that level of food and security, of the basic needs. But why it's there? Look, it's a form of resistance. It feels like a lifeline. One of my students said, and this is a quote by her, "It's the only light I can see in this overwhelming darkness." Darkness is everywhere. Death is everywhere. So you look for your identity, for your agency, for your voice, and you find it in education. Now,
yeah, I think
sorry,
go on, Ahmed, please continue.
Now, when I talked about Reconnect, and when I launched that initiative, some colleagues were suspicious, like, okay, but you will be inviting students and interested people to attend webinars which are online, but this would require reliable internet connection and would require students to seek a kind of things that they don't have access to. And I said, okay, we'll try. Let's try and launch it. And I will announce the first webinar. And then in normal situation before the war, if you run a webinar, you may receive like 20 or 30 participants in really good times. But the first one, we had over 70 students who joined us online. But you might ask how they secured the internet connection. I would say they go to an internet cafe, public place, and they pay money, which is too much for many of them. So they pay money to use the internet to power their device and access the webinar. So it's extra cost and extra effort, but yet they feel I find myself in here. This empowers me. It gives me kind of satisfaction from within. I would say it is psychological, partly, perhaps, and then it's a form of kind of Paulo Freire was talking about education is never neutral, and I feel this links to what's going on, that students feel, okay, I can't do anything about the situation, but when I continue my learning, perhaps I can change the situation. I can change what's going on, and I can take part in liberating at least my thought and changing my situation. Yeah, so it shows that students want to continue and really are attentive and like to participate.
Yeah, thanks, Ahmed. I feel I'd like to underline that from the reading I did, which I presented earlier, I wonder if that message that you've been putting across has been noted as strongly, that education itself is a form of healing and is a way of dealing with trauma, can be in itself. A number of people in the chat have asked if they can contribute and support you in any way. Your email is on the front slide, and I've put the PDF in the chat as well. But do you have any suggestions or about that?
Oh, thanks. Really, sense of community and willingness to support. This is really great. Yeah, there are different forms, I would say. I can read some of the feedback, really, really great sense of community and responsibility, ethical responsibility. Some people are offering to volunteer, training or teaching or giving a webinar. Yeah, that gives a big difference, makes a big difference. If you volunteer to give a webinar on a topic that relates to what we are talking about, great, amazing. If you are aware of any free online learning or training that are available, share with us and we can disseminate among students. Recently, one of the webinars that I was talking about as part of Reconnect, we hosted a colleague from Scotland. He secured 293 learning opportunities, free learning opportunities for our students through edX. That's a learning platform, and they utilized the opportunity. And he was telling me, Ahmed, this is really amazing. I said, why? He said, in different countries, we give access to people who pay for their access subscription and they don't use it. We give your students free access, 290 subscriptions, and they gaining certificates on a daily basis. So this is one form of support, and they are making use of it. Honestly, they are making good use of it. And they share with me every other day. They send me, oh, here's my certificate. I finished this course. Thank you. That course was really useful. And it gives you a really, really positive feeling that, wow, we are making somehow difference in their life. So yeah, if you are aware of scholarships for MA or PhD or undergrad, please feel free to share and we can disseminate. You never know. Some students may catch the opportunity and get it. Yeah, different forms of support, but they make big difference.
Yeah, Ahmed, as we are an association of academic language and learning, potentially we could offer that kind of support to your students, particularly as they're in the English department. We can talk about that afterwards as well,
Sure.
Ahmed. And
Sure.
I'll feel free to contact me as well if you're interested in that. I think that might be a direct way in which we could use our own knowledge and professional expertise to support the students in Gaza.
Yeah, I mean, also, thanks, Martin, for this. But I mean, if you write a piece of like a journal article, if you write a blog, if you do a podcast and talk about what's going on, well, not politically, I mean, what's going on for education in Gaza and how students are navigating education during this difficult time, it amplifies the voice of those students and their educators. It makes a difference. So talk about it. Well, I mean, just if you write a post about education and what's happening, and yeah, hopefully it changes. It makes a difference, and students feel that we are not alone, because we are going through a kind of a stage where we are talking about something called scholasticide. Scholasticide is a form of like systematic destruction of education, of scholarship, and I show you photo of our university. It turned into rubble. Yesterday I did an interview with last week they came to my house, CBC Canada, and yesterday they were contacting me by phone for some follow-up questions, and And they were asking me, how do you see the future of education in Gaza after the war? Like, and I said, well, to be realistic, the university is all rubble. It turned into rubble. So I can't say if the war ends tomorrow, we'll resume in-person teaching. But I should say it's going to be hopefully hybrid model where we can continue to use that form of online teaching. But again, we will resume once the war is over. And we have plans, to be honest, among us as kind of administrative staff at the university. We will put tents and hopefully prefabricated houses or caravans in the campuses of the university, remove the rubble somehow, and start teaching physically there. Because that physical in-person teaching makes a big difference if compared to online education. And students are eager. I asked them, what do you prefer? Like they were said, oh, want to go to classroom. We want to go back and see each other because that kind of human communication, well, you know about it. It's yeah. And imagine, like I'm talking to you and your cameras, most of you, your cameras are on. Imagine that you talk to a class and all the cameras are off and you can't say, turn your camera on because their environment doesn't allow turning the camera on and you have to accept it. So you can imagine how challenging it is if you keep using online teaching and online platforms.
Thanks. Look, we probably have time, maybe, Steve, for one more question, perhaps, before we finish, if anyone's got one. Sorry,
Sue, did you
again,
have a question?
Go ahead, yeah.
No, okay.
Anyone?
I think we've covered most of the ones in chat were around how to help, which I think you've sort of
Yeah,
addressed already.
yeah. Anything that, Ahmed, maybe what's your plan for the rest of the day? Because we're all halfway through our day already, but you're making an early start. Normally, would you be baking bread? I've seen you've shown me that before for the family. How's the rest of your day looking?
Well, that's true. And it's part of the daily routine now. I should say that life disrupted really everyone's daily routine. In a normal morning, I would go to university, go to my office, and then classrooms, and admin job, and then come back home. But yeah, that's true, Martin. And on a daily basis, you have to do these. I don't want to say new normal tasks because we don't want to accept it as normal. It's abnormal. But yeah, I have to because from the beginning of the war, no gas supply is allowed into Gaza. So which means we can't cook using gas or bakers are closed. So you have to bake your bread at home on fire. Not only bread, but if you cook, you have to do it on fire because that's not only the only available way to do it. And I'm not saying this is unique for me. I'm not a hero. I'm not claiming that I'm a hero. I'm just part of a story, a big story, and this applies to everyone in Gaza. Everyone, literally everyone. Uh, students, students, students experience this on a daily basis. And yesterday I saw a video of a man. Sorry, I'm being emotional. A man who is 72, and he said, I didn't eat for 3 days. And this is not exaggeration. Sorry. This is not exaggeration. This is reality. I know people who don't have food for really long time. It's not about politics, guys. I don't like politics and I don't like to talk about politics, but it's about humanity. It's about who we are. It's about loving one another. It's about it's about ethics. It's about being a human, just being a human. And yeah, it's disrupted daily routine, full of new responsibilities that are taken for granted in a normal world, really taken for granted. But yeah, if you might ask, how do you like basic needs like flour, rice, things are like trivial, taken for granted. These are like, if you achieve it on a daily basis, that's a big success, especially when you have kids.
Yeah, true. Thanks, Ahmed.
Ahmed, sorry, can
Go
I
on, Kate. Yes, please.
come in here? Ahmed, it might seem that we're being a bit silent and not asking you a lot of things, but it's because we're stunned. So
Thank you,
please
Kate.
know that, this is incredibly important and meaningful to us. And a lot of people have asked, how they can help in the chat. So, I think when you go to read the chat, you're going to get an idea of how we're feeling now. But thank
Thanks.
you for doing this. And thank you, Martin, for organizing it too.
Thank you, Kate.
Okay, well, thanks, everyone. I think we've reached the end. But as I've said, please feel free to send me any suggestions and I'll pass them on and/or contact Ahmed directly. And thank you so much, Ahmed, for getting up that bit even earlier in your day today. I know you're an
My
early
pleasure.
bird anyway. And
My pleasure.
yeah, and we're together with you during this day. Okay, I'm sure we'll all be thinking of you as you go through your daily journey today. And
Thank you.
for your students as well. Thank you so much. Okay, over to you, Steve.
Wow, I don't think I need to say much more. That was a stunning, very, very, very thought-provoking presentation. I think Kate spoke eloquently for all of us, but our silence was reflection. It wasn't nothing to say. It was so much to say, not wondering how to say it. It was incredible. Thank you very much, both of you. That was a really, really, really amazing presentation. Thank you. I'm going to switch topics.
We look forward in better days to having Ahmed here in person.
Yeah, perhaps you
one
could
of
come
our
to our next
conferences,
conference
Ahmed.
in better
It will
days.
happen.
Yeah.
It's going to happen, Ahmed.
Yeah.
It would add some context. Sorry for last comment. I assume some people are here Kiwis from New Zealand. I am a Kiwi by citizenship, to be honest, and I chose to stay in Gaza, not to leave. That's also part of the story, that I am here in Gaza with the family, and it would be great to connect virtually and also in person once the war is over.
Definitely.
Wonderful. All right. I will switch topics for a moment because Sue has asked me to remind you all about the conference submissions are open for our AALL conference in December. We're hoping you can come to that and join. Please put some expressions of interest for a presentation in. That would be great. Thank you again, Ahmed and Martin. Thank you, everybody, for coming and attending. Your attendance is what makes these type of things work. So please do keep an eye out for our next session. And if you want to revisit this, you'll be able to, because the recording will be available along with the slides at the AALL.org website. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.